The Question is an experiment in immersive theater, devised, written, and directed by Maria Oshodi, Artistic Director of Extant. Extant is Britain's only professional performing arts company of visually impaired artists. This short film shows how Maria created The Question in collaboration with engineers, artists, and academics during the project's research and development period between October 2009 and July 2010. Funded by the Technology Strategy Board, this R&D combined Extant, the Battersea Arts Centre, and the Computing Department of the Open University. Yvonne Rogers of the Open University.
The Pervasive Interaction Lab is an innovative research group that comprises designers, philosophers, computer scientists, engineers, and cognitive scientists, and we are very much about developing new user experiences from an interdisciplinary perspective.
This R&D culminated in 5 days of performances at the Battersea Arts Centre in June 2010. Maria Oshodi.
I wanted to redirect the dramatic action away from the conventional mediator of spectacle on stage and instead relocate the action of the drama within the bodily experience of each audience member. I wanted to do this by getting the audience to navigate through a dark environment that contained audio design and tactile set that they could explore and where each individual could discover the narrative in their own ways.
The narrative that Maria created was a fragmented path through the thoughts and experiences of a blind geometer called Calabi, who was struggling with scientific, philosophical, and cultural perspectives on the question of acquiring knowledge through sensory translation, and what ultimate impact this has on his identity.
Another intention was to develop part of Extant's ongoing research into creating a more authentic experience of theatre for visually impaired people.
This is the question. Which is the question? Why is the question?
After a lot of initial discussion at the beginning of the project amongst the team about how all the different elements would fit together, I decided that the best format would be to create islands of touch and audio in the dark. The audience would navigate to these zones using the haptic device to guide them.
Haptic technology employs tactile feedback to communicate with the user through their sense of touch by applying forces, vibrations, or motions to the user. Adam Spiers is the designing engineer of the haptic device and led the technical team of David McGoran and Paul O'Dowd to create the haptic Lotus.
The question is particularly interesting to me because of this concept of like sensory substitution and sensory augmentation. It's doing something which no one can experience without the technology. So we're not saying, oh, this is what it's like to be blind, because it's not. You know, here's a sense you can only have with the device in your hand, seeing how people cope with this new sense. And that's what I'm finding the most interesting.
Throughout this active exploration in the dark, the audience is guided by a specially designed haptic device called the haptic Lotus. The Lotus uses robotics and infrared sensors to change its form, and by doing so guides the audience through the installation and into each zone. The Lotus sits in the palm of your hand, its petals opening as you approach zones of interest and closing as you move further away.
Having reached a particular zone, they could then explore the tactile surfaces and shapes with their hands, whilst listening to the audio in their headphones that would only activate when they were physically in that zone.
Sound designer Peter Bosher.
In The Question, we have voices coming from the past, so they would sound remote, reverberant, somehow very distant.
Suppose a man born blind, taught by his touch to distinguish between a cube and a sphere. Suppose then he be made to see, whether by his sight he could now distinguish which the globe and which the cube.
All the time that you're wandering around, you are wearing headphones and you're in the dark. So, I mean, the sound is the main thing you'll be perceiving along with whatever you're touching.
Lynn, visual artist and set consultant.
I got involved in this project initially probably about 3 years ago when Maria said that she wanted to do this project in the dark and she wanted a set and she wanted a visually impaired artist to be part of the design team to design the tactility of the set. And I told Maria I was absolutely fine at coming up with ideas, but I wasn't so good at making, and I'd got very little experience of kind of actual set design. So then we invited Joe along as the expert.
Joe Paul, Scenographer.
Remember, we picked out for each zone. We had Lynn's initial ideas to talk through. Then we had a discussion on what the main concerns and themes for each zone were, didn't we?
Yeah.
So we pulled out from the script and from Maria's kind of concepts, the main concepts and themes.
Inside the installation, it is so dark that even the most sensitive eyes could not see their hands in front of their faces. So CCTV cameras were used to keep an eye on the audience for their own safety. And also we employed an infrared high-definition video camera to record how the audience explored the installation in the dark. In each of the 4 zones, the audience discovers a soundscape through their headphones, but only when they're inside the zone.
When most of the matter in the universe is invisible, and we only see that freak element that transmits light, there must be equivalent ways of knowing what is there, other than by just valuing the observable.
Simultaneously, each zone offers objects of varying size, shape, and textures which are designed to be explored by touch. And into this mix of using a haptic device to discover sounds and tactile experiences in the dark, Maria added a 5th element, a live actor, John Wilson Goddard, who moved silently around the installation, occasionally speaking to the audience.
The haptic space of the skin extending to fill the missing vision space.
TheQuestion is an exciting breakthrough into touch theatre. However, it's hard to tell at this point exactly where the drama rests. Is it in the thrill of moving through unpredictable landscapes? Is it in the relationship of being guided by a haptic device in the dark? Is it in the chance moment where the active interaction with a tactile object happens to coincide with the part of the narrative that's just being heard at that moment?
I was forming pictures in my head, definitely, like almost like drawing a picture, or line by line or shape by shape. Yeah. So as I made my way around the object, I was kind of creating an image, it was like taking a pencil and trying to draw a sketch from life, but it was in my head. So I was creating visual images from the touch. Yeah.
The haptic device is a thing. I quite enjoyed its feeling and its sense, and using it as a tool, and I like the way it pushed out on my fingers and I could go in and out like this with it, and I found myself focusing on a lot.
You know, you can't be a passive audience member in this situation.
It's interesting from a tactile point of view as well as auditory. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And I could choose what I wanted to listen to, and I could choose where I wanted to be. I didn't feel that I had to stay in a certain place for longer than I wanted to, so the freedom I had to move around was brilliant. That's what I really liked.
My memory of it is the tactile stuff. It felt like an adventure.
I mean, when you're blind, you don't often get opportunities to wander freely in a space physically and to play with things that you encounter. And that it's that license to play, to just investigate what's around you with your hands when you're not being observed. I mean, I know we were, but in a sense, when everyone else is in the same position and you're not being observed or judged on your movement, then that's quite liberating, and that was fun.
But I suppose my main response to it is the funness of it and the mystery of it, and it's like like an old fun fair going to a haunted house type thing.
Well, I really particularly loved the way in which the Lotus stayed with you as a sort of almost like a little friend that that accompany you on your journey, and it was a beautiful metaphor of knowledge and consciousness and awareness. If you're reading the wonderful Philip Pullman novels, I suppose it's the equivalent of a demon.
Next, Extant would like to create a very large-scale, more complete experience based on the question. This would include developing the next generation of the haptic Lotus and also building a huge complex structure in which to house the whole journey, distorting everyone's expectation of performance time and performance space.
For more information about the question, and for a full list of the performance cast and crew, please go to www.thequestion.org.uk/DVD. The Question was filmed, edited, and directed by Terry Braun. Video production by Braun Arts. The Question video, copyright 2010, Braun Arts and Extant.